Hey y'all, I know I usually don't really ever post anything on Facebook, but I had a pretty cool and I guess just really inspiring situation happen tonight, and I just felt like sharing. So I'm standing in a crowd of people, and I hear, hey Nate, Nathan, and I'm doing the, look around the like what somebody's calling my name. I know they are. And I finally found out who it is, and it's a gentleman that I went to high school with it was about 12 years ago now. Let's age myself here a little bit. Um, So we get, catch up a little bit and the hey, normal, hey, how you doing? And the first real thing he says to me is, man, in high school, I could have sworn you were racist. Now, mind you, there's a few African American folks standing around, and my instant response is, it's because I was. I came from a small town of about 1,500 people. It's actually called Whitman. It's almost spelled white man. There was one African American young man who was adopted. His name was Chris. One of my best friends growing up actually used to spend the weekends at my house. We used to pick him up, drop him off to football. Great friend of mine. Then, my freshman year of high school, I moved to Florida and get introduced to a whole new world where, a school of 60% African American and Hispanics and about 40% white. And around the same time, I lose my father. He passed away. And I kind of lose myself, honestly. I'm just, a lost kid that lost his hero and mentor and best friend. And so I played, I'm an athlete, play football, baseball, basketball. And where I'm from, I was always pretty good. And I came here and I was average at best. That might even be a long shot. But I started to develop these tendencies that were racist, hanging out with the wrong people. I used to think, my own insecurities of not being the best and, playing against people that were bigger, stronger, faster, also by being called white boy and cracker this and white boy that and all this and that. I developed this mentality of that, oh, it's okay for me to be racist or to, think I'm better than them because of, or that even us versus them mentality. And, obviously it couldn't have been further from wrong. So the young man that I met tonight pays me pretty much the best compliment I've ever gotten. He goes, man, but I followed you on Facebook and, I was really happy and proud to see that you've made a change, that you care about the African American community and that, you're doing things to try to help and kind of, instead of being the problem, kind of help, solve the problem. And I was like, man, like that was like the best compliment someone could ever pay to me. Right. And, what it was for me, what really changed me when, after my father passed away and my mother and I pretty much had lost everything and I was essentially living on the street, I was taken in by a Cape Verdean family, very light skinned, black family, by this young lady named Rainey, who was one of the greatest people I've ever met. And, one day she sits me down and she goes, Nate, do you have any idea of like, why I took you in, like why I feed you and you live here for free and I take care of you, whatever. And my natural response is, yeah, like me and Jerry are really good friends, our son. She goes, that has nothing to do with it. She says, the reason that I took you in was because your father, was the only person who always stuck up for me when someone was racist or somebody said something about me being different because of the color of my skin. Your father always stuck up for me. And that right there will forever have changed the way that I've ever perceived someone of that looked a little bit different than me. And when that young man paid me the compliment today saying that he saw that I've changed, like it was inspiring and it just inspired me. Just to post a video on Facebook of myself for the first time, maybe ever, I don't even know. And, just hoping that maybe somebody else might hear this and be, a little inspired as well. Because, let's think about it, right? Like when someone decides that they're superior to somebody because of the color of their skin, what are you saying, right? Like we all had the same amount of decision when we were brought into this world, what color we were, or what ethnicity, or what all of these things. And that's the decision we had was zero, right? Like I didn't choose to be white. Someone who's black didn't choose to be black. We all had zero decision in that process, right? We were just brought into this world. And then after that, we're we learn things, right? And we get to make conscious decisions. And, today, if you're grown and you've matured now like we're supposed to, and you're still making this decision that you think you're better than somebody because of the color of your skin or because you look different or whatever the case may be. I mean, like think about what you're saying, right? Like, how stupid is that? Like, how ignorant can you possibly be? Oh, you look different than me. You might talk a little bit different. Like, I've got to be better than you. First of all, if we don't have to be, no one has to be better than anyone. We're all created equally. And I think that people seem to forget that, and we look at these things like, oh, well, someone might talk with a little bit of slang or whatever, and like, oh, they're ghetto or they're from the ghetto. But then no one ever thinks of like, why is there even a ghetto, right? Like, white people, these white folks who are still racist and still capable of having these extremely ignorant thoughts, like, don't even sit to think that like us as white folks created the ghetto. There's one little thing called segregation, right? And like these places where criminals and all of this and that nonsense, like, white folks, get educated on the African American community, learn a little something, go down and don't defend yourself. Oh, I have one black friend. Go and sit in a black community, an African American community, and be the only white person there. And I guarantee you that you are going to have one of the best times you've ever had if you go into it with an open mind and realize that the African American community is phenomenal. I mean, this BS that we think that black people are criminals or this and that, unfortunately, our very corrupt justice system unfortunately supports that ridiculous train of thought. But the African American community is amazing. Some of the most caring, loving, affectionate people that will look out for anyone. That you have, what I mean? Like, we have this weird, like, misconceived notion of like, we should be scared, or, oh my God, there's an African American or a black person around, like, lock your car, like that couldn't be further from the truth. And if you still think that way, like, I'm sorry, like, you are the minority. If you're capable of thinking that you are inferior or that you're better than someone because your skin color or because, you look a little bit different, you are the minority in today's world. Going into 2019, we understand that if you think that you're better than someone because you look a little bit different, and you can't just, take a second to maybe walk a mile in their shoes and just to think about what you're actually thinking, like, you are the minority. And we understand that in today's world, if you're making a conscious decision to think those negative thoughts and disgusting thoughts of racism, like, you are the minority and you are what's wrong with this country and this world. And I mean, if you do think that, if you support these alt-right BS nonsense hate groups or anything of the nature, or even if you're even just capable of like having a thought of like, oh, I'm better than someone because of the color of my skin, like, go look in the mirror, do some self-reflecting, and you're going to find that that's your own insecurities and that it's not actually true. I mean, racism is a disgusting, disgusting thing. We just celebrated the only American hero, by the way, that's only ever had a holiday after them, and that's Martin Luther King, because it's a man that stood for something, and he knew and saw the injustices that were going on in this world, and he stood up for them. And he's a real close second, right behind my father, to being one of my top heroes, because he stood for something and he meant something. And, we could all learn something from him. Moral of the story is if you think you're better than someone because of the color of your skin, if you're whatever, if you have any bit of racism inside of you, then, I mean, you are the minority and you're in the wrong. And there's no excuse for it. You should honestly be ashamed of yourself and do some in-depth soul searching and find out what the reason is, because it's you, it's not them. And I promise you that if you give the African American community a chance, you will learn to love them, because they are amazing people, as is every other race and religion. And just because someone's different doesn't mean that they're wrong or that they're bad or that, whatever. So let's make a decision to put an end to this BS and make decisions for ourselves and understand that just because we might have been told something, doesn't mean it's true. I can't send enough love out to the African American community and tell every African American man, woman, and child that walks this planet, or any other race other than mine, that I got nothing but love for you. And I appreciate you. And, I hope that someday we can live in a world together that we all understand that being different isn't a bad thing. And that we can all live happily together and learn to love one another. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'll probably be posting some more stuff here in the future, just because I got some things in my mind that I'd like to get out, and that I think some people might be able to actually learn something from. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a good night.